Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Speculations as to the Nature of Pluto by Manly P. Hall. An article taken from The All-Seeing Eye, Volume 5, Number 6, March 1931. Speculations as to the Nature of Pluto by Manly P. Hall. Ancient astrologers achieved a very high degree of skill in prognostication without considering either Uranus or Neptune. Regarding the Sun and Moon as planets, the Chaldeans based their horo-sopic calculations upon the aspects of 7 bodies in their relationship to the spot on Earth where the native was born. The accuracy of astrology prior to the discovery of Uranus and Neptune indicates that these 2 planets were not essential factors in the reading of an ordinary horoscope. Their influence upon the ordinary individual was comparatively negligible. Within the last century, startling changes have taken place. Life has become much more intensive and complex than in earlier ages. We are daily confronted with problems beyond the wildest imaginings of the old stargazers. The Uranian qualities, for example, which were practically latent in the Egyptian, were released upon the world at about the time of the French Revolution. It has been well said that those forms of learning which are now the common property of man were once the most closely guarded secrets of the pagan priestcrafts. Thus, the Uranian and Neptunian influences were felt only within the temples of the mysteries, institutions dedicated to the sciences and philosophies which were under the particular patronage of these exalted rays. When science, philosophy, and occultism were released to the masses and became part of the lives of uncounted millions, new forces swayed society, and mankind in general came on rapport with the stars of the wise. Pluto, a dark, mysterious mass whirling on the newly established boundary of the solar system, has now been added to the planetary family. Astrologers everywhere are speculating as to the nature of the influences which Pluto will unloose upon mankind. Believing that there is a power which so firmly guides the destiny of the universe, we feel that the name Pluto was not given to this planet by accident. We affirm this even in the face of a general discontent, for many astrologers feel that a more elegant and optimistic title should have been chosen. No sooner had the planet been discovered than the whisper went around, it must be the higher octave of something. There is just a question in my mind as to the utter validity of the octave theory. I think we shall find that these planets now referred to as octaves of lower planets have distinct individualities of their own. It has been suggested that Pluto was the higher octave of Mars. If it is demonstrated by experimentation and observation that Pluto has a martial spirit, it will probably be assigned a throne in the second half of the constellation of Scorpio. Regardless of whether it is accepted as an octave of Mars, we feel that its affinity to Scorpio is evident from all available information. Affirming that Pluto was probably better named than the average astrologer realizes, let us see what we can discover from the name which will help us to understand the nature. Pluto was the 3rd person of the interior triad of the Roman divinities. The inferior or material universe was divided into 3 parts, of which the spiritual was ruled by Jupiter, the intellectual by Neptune, and the physical by Pluto. The great subterranean cavern in which Pluto held court simply signified the cavernous interior of the world egg. Although Pluto was popularly regarded as a god of death, he was in reality the regent of the physical universe and corresponded to the ego or incarnating soul of man. This ego holds court in the dark recesses of the physical body, even as Pluto dwelt in the gloomy depths of mortal natures. In Freemasonry, Pluto is a variation of Hiram the Builder. Therefore, in certain of his most secret mysteries, the death and resurrection of Pluto was celebrated. From the Egyptians, we can learn much. The Pluto of the Romans, having crossed into Egypt, was worshipped there in the form of Serapis, according to Julius Caesar. The Serapian cult in Egypt was not part of the early theology of the Egyptians, but flourished almost contemporary with Christianity. The Emperor Hadrian, in a letter to Servianus, declared that the worshippers of Serapis in Egypt were Christians, and that even the bishops of the church did honor to this god. Critical investigation reveals, therefore, that Serapis were recognized as a prototype of Christ. In his Gnostics and Their Remains, C.W. King observes, "There can be no doubt that the head of Serapis, marked as the face is by a grave and pensive majesty, supplied the first idea for the conventional portraits of the Savior. It thus appears that while to the ignorant multitudes Serapis or Pluto was held up as a symbol of sorrow and death, it was recognized by the initiated priests as figurative of resurrection and immortality. This is not the only example of deities whose inner meanings were reserved when exposed to the profane. In India, the god Shiva plays the dual role of destroyer and creator. The consistency of the position is only evident to the enlightened. Yet if we will think carefully, we will realize that every creator is a destroyer and every destroyer a creator. Remember the old truism, disintegration always takes place that reintegration may follow upon a higher level of manifestation. We realize even in daily life that we grow more rapidly through adversity than through success. The more we are opposed, the more certain we are of accomplishment. Serapis, the Alexandrian Pluto, was the god and patron of learning, and the Serapeum, in which stood the most famous of his images, also housed the famous Alexandrian Library, the greatest institution of learning ever raised by the pagan world. Approximately 385 AD, Theodosius published his memorable edict ordering the destruction of the Serapeum. An incited Christian mob literally tore the building stone from stone, destroyed the books, and lighting such stuff as was inflammable, turned the whole edifice into the blazing funeral pyre of the sad-faced god. Serapis fell, and with him perished the wisdom of uncounted centuries. The question may be asked, why should a god of wisdom be also regarded as a god of death? Socrates, dying, ordered the sacrifice of a cock, which was the usual sacrifice of a neophyte entering the temple of the mysteries. It was written repeatedly and inferred time without end that the god of death was the custodian or keeper of the mysteries of life. In the New Testament, it is declared that death is the last enemy to be overcome. Therefore, death stands on the borderline between mortality and immortality. The philosophic death of the mysteries was the true gate of initiation. The illumined sages used terms borrowed from the outer life of man to symbolize the phases of his inner or spiritual consciousness. Serapis was therefore the god of the philosophic death, continually destroying the old and giving place to the new. He was the patron of all such forms of learning as contributed to the well-being of the human soul. As the patron of essential learning, Serapis was furthermore the guardian of the mystery schools, in fact, a personification of them. From this it may become evident why the initiation ceremony was given in crypts, and vaults and the very sanctuaries themselves were patterned after tombs. This was said to be because all who entered them died, for the man who came out after the ceremony was not the man who went in. He might appear to be of similar features and proportions, but his old self had died and a new and immortal self had taken its place. Even today, in certain of the Christian mystical institutions, entrance into holy orders is regarded as equivalent to death. Therefore, the brother leaves his name and personality behind him and, once within the cloister, is regarded as a person dead to and separate from all the concerns of outer life. Sometimes a nun, taking the final orders in order to emphasize her separation from the world, is actually placed in a casket, where her friends and relatives see her for the last time as though she were actually dead. From these suggestions, it will be evident how death was used to symbolize a new life in God. With Serapis, the mystery schools of the ancient world fell, destroyed by the ignorance of the mob. For 1600 years, religious ignorance has reigned upon the earth. The philosophers, driven into cellars and garrets and persecuted by unenlightened despotism, have dreamed of a better day when wisdom will again be established upon the earth. One of our most conservative and materialistic thinkers, Joseph Wood Crutch, in his book, This Modern Temper, declares that the re-establishment of the ancient mysteries is inevitable before the end of the present century. May we hazard the speculation that Pluto may prove to be the star of the mystery schools, and that the discovery of this power in the heavens heralds the awakening of the human soul to the great realities of the spiritual world. Scorpio is the house of initiation, for only when the sun is in certain degrees of this sign are candidates taken into the invisible world. It would therefore be proper for Pluto to be enthroned in the second half of this sign where the sacred degrees are located. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.